All right. Here we are at another episode of Kink Tank with your host, the voiceless one. Uh, Sorry, my voice is really bad. I'm going to struggle through tonight. And I'm going to try to do as little talking as possible, which should work for a lot of our viewership and the people in this room. Um,
I sure hope
who, am
someone
I,
can pick up the slack.
who am I kidding? I can't help myself. um, so today we are going to talk about BDSM checklists. And this is something that we were just talking about a little bit earlier. Seems to be sort of a waning trend in at least our BDSM community that it's well, will somebody explain what a BDSM checklist is or how it works?
I'll take a crack at it. A BDSM checklist, generally, at least the way I've seen them used, is a means for two people who are looking at the possibility of having a relationship, whether it be simply a play situation or a full-blown relationship, on essentially mapping out their opinions on particular kinks. So you have a list either of that's generic that you got from somewhere, or you actually have a specific list of your kinks that you want to go through so you can get the other person's take on them. Yes, no, maybe, under these conditions. It's what it sounds like. It's a checklist that lets you go through particular kinks and find common ground.
Okay, so there is an exhaustive list of activities and types of play included on these checklists usually. And then
Well,
there's some sort of voting mechanism or rating mechanism that a person who's filling out this checklist has. So, for instance, something that they are wildly interested in might get a 5, or something that is a hard limit that would never happen under any circumstances would be a 0. So they go through these activities one by one and rate them. But the idea of the checklist is to share that with your prospective partner or your partner so that they have better insight into some of the things that you're into. Anything else I'm missing?
Or that you might be into. A lot of them have space for you to say, I've done this, or I've not done this, but I'm interested in this. I've tried it once, but I'm still not sure. Like, there's room for that, too.
That's true. Some of them do have I've done this, I do this a lot. Um, I haven't done it, but I'd like to try, or I haven't done it and I have no interest. So all of those are, but the idea being that this is a communication tool that some people use, and I know that we've brought these up in different, contexts before in different episodes of the Kink Tank, and it seems like at least a few people in this room sort of agree with me. I don't use them because I have a problem with some of that, or I guess I should say a problem with people who use these checklists in a certain way. So, can you give me an example? First of all, who uses BDSM checklists? Is there anybody in this room that either, when considering somebody for play, that's something that you go to and have them fill out, or not?
Well, actually, just real quick, I was actually just talking to somebody extremely recently, and I was just discussing, what types of, things that they might be into, and they sent me a list of things that I guess somebody had either sent them or that they had seen on the internet and that they had filled out, and it has basically a list of different things, and it's either a yes, no, unsure, and it has a little space for each thing to kind of be explained. And so that was something that they gave me that I didn't ask for.
When
But
you
that
were when you were
was,
asking this question, this is interesting
yeah.
though. Was it like, so hey, what are you into? Or is it like, I want to be involved with you and we'd like to play, so tell me about your interests? Or is this like TMI? Because they sent you
No,
this
no,
list
no.
of like 1,000 things. You're like, I just asked what you were into. I didn't.
Well, they're newer to the community and the scene, and they were again, I've never met them before, and we were just chatting back and forth actually online, and I just brought up, hey, what kind of things are you interested in, and what might you be interested in, to kind of gauge are my kinks your kinks, and do we kink the same way? And they just, bam, here's this whole long list of things that they've thought out, and I thought that was great. Because it saves me this list would have taken however many messages or phone conversations back and forth to be able to figure out. And so it was kind of nice that they've put the thought into it, that they actually kind of are looking inside and saying, what actually am I interested in, and if I don't know, reaching out, I guess, for more information on that, and so it kind of sped things up a lot. To see, hey, are we interested in the same things at all?
So the oldest form of the BDSM checklist, I guess, is what, the hanky code.
No, it's interesting. I would disagree with that. Like, I understand that, like the flagging in general, but the checklist to me has always been a let's talk about what we have in common, and the hanky code flagging has always been about sort of more immediate advertising.
I would agree with that.
So it's a broadcast. This is what I'm into to everybody in the room who knows
Well,
what
it's
that
not-
color
it's not
is.
just-
It's more of a status. I am
Hold on.
this, and I'm interested in this now. Like, I am at the bar, and,
Yeah, I'm
and
at the
it's a way for
bar,
people
and
to
I'm
easily
gonna go
see.
home and do this now, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're flagging yellow, you're basically saying, I'm out having a few drinks, I want someone to piss on me before the night is out.
Well, shouldn't they be having a few drinks then?
They might, yeah.
So, and one of the problems, I guess, that I've had, and the reason why I've been down on checklists before, and this was before I kind of understood how to, how in what situations they might be useful, is that it seemed to me like some of the people that I knew, and granted, this was, years ago in the community when I feel like these were in more widespread use, that it seemed like the people that were, it was like, hey, I met this person and we're having a nice little chit chat. And so it's like, like a job application or something. It's like, here's the form to fill out, and then I can decide whether or not we should continue talking, or we've decided that we like each other, that we turn each other on, so we're going to play. So I want to know every nook and cranny of your fetish interests, so that I know what kind of palette I have to paint with. And it's something that always seemed to me as a way to abridge conversation and a way to squelch negotiation. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
kind of like
I
that.
have a quick question for you with that. When, I guess, at what point did these checklists start becoming in popular use?
I would say right around somewhere between 2000 and 2005. Of course, that was when I got into BDSM in 2000 into the community. So they might have been in use before then as well.
Well, I'm just wondering, because with the way that dating, even in the vanilla world, has changed pretty dramatically with the advent of the wonderful internet, I can't see people, going to events or things and pulling out a folder, a 3-ring binder, paper and pencil, and sitting down with these checklists and actually, going through them like that. I think
It's
that with
been done.
online, I wouldn't
It
be
has
surprised.
been done.
But I wouldn't say that that's the norm. But with more people meeting not face-to-face initially, through dating sites, through on FetLife, whatever, and now that tool is a little bit easier to do in the virtual space as opposed to that face-to-face communication. So I wonder if the BDSM checklists came about because people didn't meet the same way that they used to meet.
It could be. I just had a thought that, you were asking me about what time we're talking about here. I was like, around 2005 or something like that. And then I'm thinking of the FetLife fetish list. Has that killed the BDSM checklist?
I think much more.
I thought you actually were talking about. Because I know when I go through the vetting process, that's one of the things I look through, what kind of things they've loved on FetLife, their fetish list, and what groups they're into. And that immediately takes away things that I need to ask about because I feel like I already know. If I'm really interested, I can just ask more specifically about what I know they're already into.
I think that's probably true. I mean, that platform does allow you to have more conversations, too. So maybe also before, I mean, you just have that opportunity to have those conversations or to put yourself out there in that way or have that language. Because I think what a lot of people probably like about a checklist is that it's very specific. There's really no gray area because the words on the list are not like, I mean, sure, things on there, some of them might say spanking. Pretty straightforward. But underneath spanking on a lot of lists is like, where do you want me to spank you?
With instruments, with hands, with
Your ass? Yeah. Do you want to be spanked with a paddle? Do you want to be spanked on your, where do you? All of these specifics on there. So there's really no gray area to them, and I think the same people who tend to like those quizzes, like do you know the quizzes I'm talking about, where they say.
Or the OkCupid questionnaire. That was going to be my next one. The people that,
No, the ones that say they're like 57%
yeah.
or like 28% sadist, those kinds of things. I tend to like those, but I guess because it gives them the language for something they couldn't articulate before. So I don't know if that's probably part of it with a checklist, too.
That's fair. I mean, I'm looking at a checklist right now, and this is on evilmonk.org. And I know it's been up there for at least a decade, but it has a list of things that in alphabetical order. So it starts with abrasion, age, play, and the first thing I notice is anal sex. So you have anal sex, then you have anal plugs. You have anal plugs 3 times. You have anal plugs small, anal plugs large, and anal plug under. Public underclothes. And this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Like, okay, you have a checklist that says, are you into anal play? That could cover a lot of things that maybe after you see that on a checklist that you can just talk about butt stuff instead of having to be more specific on the questionnaire about where, when, and with what, and underclothes or in private, like, you're taking away part of this conversation, but I forget sometimes that taking away part of that conversation is what's necessary for some people who don't feel comfortable talking about these things, who, it's kind of like the, do you like me, yes or no, with the check boxes, the note that you pass. This is the kind of person that can't go to another person and say, hey, I think you're cool, and I'd like to know you better. Do you want to watch Netflix and hang out sometime?
I'm going to side with Josie on this one, though. And this as a topic has come up in the past. And I firmly believe that if you can't talk to the person you want to do it to about what you want to do to them, you shouldn't be doing it with them.
I don't agree 100% there.
No, if you cannot say, hey, I'm into this, I like this kind of stuff, to me being, well, I'm too shy or I'm too uncomfortable to ask you about all of the things I want to do to you, that's just, I think that's no bueno because...
But isn't the list kind of a compromise between those things? Like, so maybe they can't go up to you and say, I want you to hit me with this in this place, but they can come up to you and say, hello, I filled out this list, and it has that on it, and it has a green light on it. So doesn't that count as like a compromise?
One from column B.
Yeah, that's
This is
right? I mean,
This
no?
is sounding oddly specific to like the list that you see in 50 Shades of Grey, where
That's
hey,
a BDSM
contract.
checklist.
well, I mean, if you take the contract part out of it, that's essentially what the checklist is.
My issue is though, it is very easy to make a list, like, just to use kind of the really obvious example, like butt plug underclothes in public. Yes, or I'm interested in it in a 4. Oh, cool. Well, I'm going to send you to your sister's wedding with a plug. Okay, well, hang on. Like, when I said public, I didn't mean all the time. You know what I mean? Like, they're always great as conversation starters, but they are never... Because the biggest issue that I have with checklists, as it were, is I can absolutely say unequivocally I like A, B, and C, on a scale of 1 to 5 4, 2, and 7, whatever it happens to be, and none of those apply to you.
Well, can I add something to the conversation real quick?
Please.
Okay, so I'm not sure where the question was. I'm coming in behind, but I've kind of got a gathering of what it is. Something for me when I'm negotiating or talking to a partner I'm going to play with or I've been with for a while, it doesn't matter. Communication is a huge thing, and it's a part of what we do as a whole, no matter what. It comes down to conversation. So for me, when it comes down to the whole checklisting and stuff, basically what I do is I'm like, I want to experience that person, not what I want. That's how I play. So I basically go about it saying, these are the things that are my hard limits. Don't do these or the scene is over. So other than that, it's open. Like, I know how you play. I've seen you play. I know what you do, and I know what you enjoy. But we also have to remember that there are other things that the tops do need to discuss. There's a lot of emphasis on the bottoms going to people and saying, what do you want to do? What are you into? So I have to agree that the tops or whatever is going on, everybody needs to be communicating in some shape or form.
And I think that where I've sort of come around on the idea of BDSM checklists is that I used to look at them as a substitution for conversation, communication, negotiation.
Oh, so it was about the checklist. Okay.
And I realized that not everybody uses it to that extent. There are some people who do, and I wouldn't advise that. But as a conversation starter, as you know, because it's different for somebody to say, so what turns you on and what are you into? Because that shy person that has trouble communicating or doesn't like, gets embarrassed about talking about their sexuality from the way they were raised or for whatever reasons, may have trouble answering that question. But to write it on a piece of paper to say, I like butt stuff, or to, when somebody asks specifically, are you into needles, or is that something that you'd like to try? That's a much easier question than when somebody just asks you, what are you into? So this can start and sort of coax a conversation out of somebody who is otherwise a bit uncomfortable.
And I think the checklists are great for that purpose, but also if it's just something you throw up on your profile, then it also helps people who look at your profile and say, hey, I might want to play with this person. So, ta-da, there's already a checklist of things. But right. I think it's a great conversation starter, but I wouldn't use it past that. Like, it would be something you'd find on my profile. That's it.
Well, and the more I think about it, too, the more I'm realizing that I don't use the checklist because I just don't like the format of them. But I have had some really fun conversations with people where they have gone to my profile and they have seen my list of kinks and they have brought up a few things like, hey, I found this needle in this hang stack. Let's talk about that. And then we've had some really interesting conversations that we probably wouldn't have had because I wouldn't have brought it up or because just looking at me, you can't tell what I could be into. And that can be really fun. So in that regard, what?
You're an enigma.
Exactly. Well, no, but anybody. You can't look at anybody and know what they're into, generally speaking. I mean, what are they, So I think that in that regard, it can be a useful tool just to start conversation. But I think they can be limiting. They can certainly be limiting because I think, at least, a lot of the things that I am into, I'm into because I'm into doing them with you. And if you had given me a list and said, fill out a bunch of things, there's a bunch of shit I wouldn't have put on that list, but it's something I really enjoy doing with you, in my relationship with you. And there are some partners that I've been with for a really long time. And I don't know that we've ever articulated this thing that we do or this thing that I like, but it's certainly a thing that we do and a thing that I like. But it wouldn't make it to my list because it doesn't occur to me to do that with somebody else. And if you don't have the language for that or you don't have the experience with someone for that, then it's not going to make it there. And that's the part that kind of makes me sad about them because they can be really limiting if you're not willing to feel a person out without a list.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just to kind of turn this, and I agree that I think it definitely should be used as a conversation starter, not a end-all, be-all limiting type of document. But another thing that they could be used for is for some introspective. What am I into? What do I really enjoy? How much do I really enjoy this versus that? I mean, I think that it could definitely be used not just for a tool for somebody else, but a tool for yourself to be able to look at do I want, am I interested at all in needles?
Yeah, or
no.
what are
How
my
much?
conditions? Yeah,
Right, and it helps you get to thinking. It helps your thought process to actually go through one of these lists yourself, and just to be able to kind of clarify to yourself more firmly what I'm into.
There is a benefit as well. We kind of joked about the 50 Shades of Grey negotiation scene, but they did show her sort of doing some homework on her computer because she's reading this contract and probably doesn't know what some of these things are. So as a glossary of kinky activities, these checklists are actually pretty good because they leave no stone unturned. There is everything on here.
I've never heard of this. I have to go to Google and type this in now and find out what it
You
is
have to
and
be,
see a
you gotta
YouTube
be
video
careful
on
with
it.
You got to be really careful with that. It's true. As far as like, if you're new, if you're into this and you maybe just don't know the smorgasbord that is available to you,
Right.
this would be a good thing to go over and sort of learn some of these terms so that you can negotiate when it does come time for oral negotiation with somebody about play that
Or negotiating oral.
you would negotiate or negotiating oral that you have the words for it. No,
Yeah.
I don't like arm binders. I know what they are now, and I know that I'm not interested. I'm just going through the A's here, because I've got animal rolls, arm and leg sleeves, asphyxiation, auctioned for charity, bathroom use control, bestiality, beating soft, beating hard, blindfolds, being serviced, being bitten, breast chest bondage, breath control. We're not even through the B's, and it seems like we've already,
I mean, I think it'd be
quite a bit
great
of ground.
You kind of sold me on the idea now that I actually know what it is, and I think it would be great if it were just very generalized, not into the specific list that you were reading off to, but for like a small party where not everybody knows each other, not everybody knows the kind of play that everybody's into. It is a great way to like, hey, I'm getting ready to do a needle scene. Did anybody mark down they were curious about needles? I need a volunteer. It's an interesting social tool, but the way you described it, I wouldn't want to use it all the time.
Well, as long as it doesn't come to some kind of scoring comparison where people...
You don't score at least 40, we're not compatible.
I'm kinky. Well, I remember there was another social network, a local social network that failed a few years ago, and they had a sort of how dirty are you, like how corrupt you are, or something like that. They had all these things like if you've ever spent the night in jail or skinny dipped, just all these
Mojo?
things. And I felt, it was Mojo. And I went, and for some people that was like a badge of honor. They're like, I'm 90%, badass. I'm 90% whatever.
That's awesome.
Or, and it's interesting to see. There was actually somebody that I dated that she had taken the test and she had the score, and it's there for everybody to see and everything. And about 2 years after I started dating her, she took the test again, and her score went way up. And I just felt so accomplished.
Yes.
That I
feel like a very basic social game there is never have I ever with your friends. And it's not really,
Exactly.
It's not really like who's the kinkiest. It's just that sounds like the fun guy I want to meet later tonight, or girl.
Right.
But everyone should see their score in something like this.
Yeah, but it's not like the score that people put on their FetLife profiles. I'm 86% submissive, and they're only 86% submissive. I'm like 95% submissive. The checklist is not a competition for how much you've done or how much kinky shit you're willing to do. It's something that you have to be honest with your partner about, so that you can get what you want out of it, out of your play and out of your negotiations. So
I just still feel like the whole checklist are an excuse for being lazy with your communication. But that's just me personally.
Well, yeah, before you got it.
People that are too introverted to actually be able to communicate that way.
then they shouldn't be playing, honestly.
I think that's a blanket judgment, and I think it's probably not fair to them.
Well, I think if you can't communicate with how you want your scene to happen, how can I as a top trust you to communicate with me during this scene? If you're too introverted to have that initial conversation, I'm not going to be able to trust you enough to have that conversation if something comes up and I'm hurting you.
Yeah,
But you're also talking about pickup play. You're not entertaining the possibility of someone having their partner fill out a list for future explorations. You know?
Well, I think even with the partner thing, I still think if your partners, you even more should be discussing these things. I think your communication and your development of that list should already be so much based on conversation, not a piece of paper or list that's so generalized that you can't really, I don't know. For me, it's
no,
still,
I understand what you're
everything
saying.
is more about communication for me.
I agree that communication should be the goal, but I disagree with you and Shane that if you can't say that you like to be fisted in this way under these circumstances, that you shouldn't be doing it. I disagree completely.
Well, no, I don't think you need to say I like to be fisted this certain way while I'm in this position. I don't mean that. I mean just
let's
the sense of,
dumb it down a little bit and say I'm not comfortable enough. I carry shame about the fact that I want to be fisted. And I don't want to say that. The words cannot come out of my mouth. But that doesn't mean that I don't want it. And that doesn't mean that the person that I have a relationship with, who I've spent a lot of intimate time with, who, understands my other, knows the kind of porn that I watch or the other kinds of things that I'm into, that couldn't be on the table and a good activity and fulfilling for both people just because one person can't see
but
it.
if you can't trust your partner enough to come out with your intimacies like that, what's the point?
Well, but
What's
see,
the point?
If it's pickup play, it's totally different. I totally get that. But if you're in a relationship, in a committed relationship with someone, and you can't trust them with things like that,
we do the same thing with journaling. We do the same thing with journaling. Sometimes you just cannot say out loud the things that you are thinking, feeling, wanting, desiring, or whatnot for whatever reason, whether it be because you're embarrassed about it, because so you're still socially conditioned that this isn't okay. But you can write it down in a journal. At least in my experience, I've seen people being able to write things down that they could not have told me because they were, for whatever reason, ashamed, shy, insert whatever here. But having that median, the list, is very similar to being able to have that person write it down in a journal. It still gets it out, and it still gets you to where you can then talk about it. I saw in your journal that you wrote this, and let's talk about it. And then you're the one bringing it up. Maybe it's something that they really want, but they just can't talk about it, but they can write it down. So I think that it could be used as a good thing if it's, again, not the end-all, be-all, but a starting spot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's a great idea, the whole journal thing. But again, it's also going to be something that was communicated and negotiated. So again,
well, it's not like it's not like I have a checklist and now we're done and we're good.
It's not negotiated. It was mentioned loosely. It was consented to in a roundabout kind of a way. But they probably still never said, "I really like." Maybe I like it when you smack me across the face, but I've never told you that. But when you do it, I say, "Yes, please more." When you do it, I smile. When you do it, I jump on you. I never said, I love it when you smack me across the face, but I clearly do, and I want you to continue.
No, I'm not talking about the thing, like the anal fisting or whatever was negotiated. I'm talking about the journaling. So that saying to a partner, hey, I'm not comfortable saying certain things, so here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to put it in this journal because I don't feel safe or I feel insecure about talking to you. So then there's that steady implement of creating conversation. But
yes,
it's still,
but I still disagree with you that if you can't say it or communicate it, that you shouldn't be doing it, or what's the point? Because I know if you look at, so for instance, there is a lot of oral sex that goes on with vanilla couples who aren't striving for communication and environment for honesty to talk about these things. They do these things, and it is good, and it is fulfilling, and it is a bonding experience that they both share and love. But they never said, I would like for you to do this. Or while they're doing it, hey, it could be a little better if you did this because I particularly like this. They don't have to say any of that to have good experiences and to get something out of it. I agree that communication should be the goal, and I agree that providing an environment that people can say these things to you is paramount. But to say that if you can't talk about it, you shouldn't be doing it, or that it's not going to be a good thing, kind of to Josie's point, I disagree there.
Well, it's not that I was saying I don't want, maybe I didn't communicate it properly, but I'm saying for me as a top, if someone cannot communicate with me what they're wanting to receive out of that, because I do top on occasion, and there's negotiation, there's conversation, obviously, that happens there. And if you cannot communicate with me what you want or what your hard limits are, I'm probably not going to play with you, because if I can't trust you enough to be open with me to the point of what you want to receive and what you don't want to receive, I'm not going to trust you enough to say if I've crossed a line. Because I've played with people and they have, bounced around in the communication and seemed uncomfortable, and I played with them still, and later on they come back and they say, I was uncomfortable with this happened. Well, why did you not tell me during the scene that you were uncomfortable with this and we could have prevented this from happening?
What if they said to you, I want you to do what you want to do?
Then that's fine, because I tell people that too, but I would say very clearly, what are your hard limits?
Okay.
Where can I not go?
But they are choosing not to communicate.
Have the hard limits.
They're choosing not to. They're choosing not to communicate with you about what they like and how they like it. They're saying,
but
I want
also
you.
ask them, have you seen me play? Do you know how I play? Because if they haven't, there's still going to be that communication, whether they want it or not. Because if they haven't seen me play and they don't know how I play, then they're not going to know what I'm going to use or not. So there's still going to be that conversation. And if they don't want to have that conversation, I'm probably not going to play with them.
And
because they don't know what they're entering into.
I feel the same way. There is a minimum that I require, basically.
Yes.
I don't require a checklist. I don't need to know your blood type, or I don't need to I need to know enough to feel good about it.
Yeah.
And if I feel like the person who I'm speaking with can't communicate to my minimum standard, then it probably isn't going to be a go. So I took us off on the rails a little bit. Sorry about that. Let's get back to the checklists. And I think, so is this, by and large, are they a good thing? Do they do more harm than good? Do that,
I think that they can be a good thing, but I think that they can also do harm. Again, I think it matters that it is a starting point for communication and for further communication, and not in place of communication.
Agreed.
Well, I think there's a difference between doing harm and being a roadblock to more good stuff. I don't think checklists do harm to anything. I mean, I don't think they're actively doing any harm, but they might cheat you out of a good experience, because you might read something like fisting on a list and go, fuck no, I'm never going to be into that, and put no on your list, and then have a partner who sticks really rigidly to your list, and then you never got to try any of these things that you said no to. So I think in that way they can kind of cheat you out of an experience, but all we have are tools, right? All of our language is tools, all these little things that we use to negotiate, and these little tests and these fetish lists and all these things, they're a way to express ourselves, and they're a tool to use to get what you want. And in that regard, I think a tool is this list is a great tool when abridged, when used appropriately. I think having like 300 items on your BDSM checklist is a lot.
It's ridiculous.
Like, a few of those things you could just take off. Like maybe you only need 30. I don't know, but I definitely think it's a useful tool when used correctly.
Yeah, and I think once you have those 30 items, when you find out the yeses or the maybes, then maybe you can, expand the drop down and get more.
I like that.
Get more specific with them, so you can skip entire sections, kind because I'm not into blood. Anything with blood is out. Boom. Half your shit is gone. Now you can, so I agree with that. I think we've kind of gone through this topic. I appreciate everybody's input on the matter. I think now we're going to shift gears a little bit and start the second part of our broadcast. And today we're going to talk about rapid negotiation. And this is something that I'd like to see a little bit more of in our communities. We're talking about pickup play. These are, I'm at a party, I meet somebody that interests me, I would like to have a scene with them. How do we move forward and go about? Because on the one hand, you have the talk it to death, negotiate the shit out of it, spend all your time in the dungeon sitting in a corner chit-chatting, or not talking about anything and run the risk of having an absolutely horrible experience in the dungeon. So where is the middle ground that you seek? I don't know. Not everybody's into pickup play. So for those of you who are,
For me, I find checklists really help.
So I'm gonna say that for real. I actually do think checklists help, but not big long ones. I think I'm really good at this kind of negotiation. Personally, I'll toot my own horn there. But I think that instead of like a big long fill this out with a pencil list, I think, especially as a top, I think it's really helpful to come to someone who wants to play with you and to be able to say, okay, cool, do you have anything specific? Especially for those people that go, no, do whatever you want. I'm not ever going to operate under that, because here's what happens. I might think you're crazy because you just gave me carte blanche and you may or may not know me that well. Also, maybe you've seen me play and you like the things that I like to do. That's awesome, but if you don't give me like a place to jump off with, I feel like as a bottom, I might not get what I wanted because I said do whatever, but I didn't tell you, but I especially like this, so you might not do that thing that I like, which would be disappointing to me in a scene. And as a top, there are so many options. I'm just kind of, I don't know what you want, and I think it can be hard to shape. But if I give you 5 things, if I go down a list in my head and I say, okay, is it how do you feel about me biting you? How do you feel about me hitting you with this? How do you feel like, is it okay for me to go over here? That kind of stuff, it sets a stage. And then I have like a framework upon which to build. But
a rough outline.
You what?
A rough outline.
Yeah, it gives you bones to that,
Well, there are sort of 4 areas.
Not the checklist, sort of.
Right. Four areas that I always feel like need to be touched upon. And this isn't necessarily in order of importance, but sort of in order of progression. And that is, first thing I want to know is some medical and physical details about you, if that's applicable. So if you're doing a rope scene and somebody has joint issues, muscle problems, etc., they really have to tell you that. If you're doing, is there, do you have to have your inhaler nearby? Are you diabetic? Are you going to crash on me and fall off the cross? And you don't necessarily have to get into the, well, I'm allergic to almonds type of thing because, well, unless that's the kind of play you had in mind. So I'm saying just like a general, there are like some big things where you say, I have bad knees, so you got to be careful how long, if I'm going to be kneeling or whatever. So physical, medical. The second one are play considerations. And what I like to do when I've done pickup play, because I have a pretty decent toy bag and a fair amount of stuff in there, is I like to sit down with the toy bag and go through everything and see reactions, have a little discussion, because sometimes you'll get that will go in this pile because it will never be used on me ever. And this one will go in this pile because it looks amazing. And that is a good jumping off point. It's not the end of it, but it is a good place to sort of start the conversation. The third one is intimacy and sexual contact. I might feel really turned on by this person, and I might want to do intimate or sexual or things like put my mouth on you. Can I bite you? Are you looking at this as I'm topping you, or are you looking at this as I like you and I want to do dirty things with you? So to kind of get a feel for the other person, what they expect from me in that regard is important, because I don't want to be that guy who ends up groping on their bits when they were like, whoa, hey, I thought you were just going to spank me. And then the fourth one is aftercare. So I like to touch on all of those. So feel free to comment, modify, expand, add. What else do you guys get into?
I'm pretty lucky where I've got my specific style of play, and I'm generally safety conscious, and I don't have a bottom, so I often wind up doing a lot of pickup play. And often what I find very helpful is to just go ahead and tell the bottom, hey, this is what I'm into, this is what I want to do to you. We'll go through a quick little, with no objects, role play so that you see what's about to happen. And that way we can touch on medical, because they'll easily be able to tell me, like, oh, there's no way I can do that, I've got this or that issue. Or it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, will you also be kissing on my neck? Or how close will you be getting to me? And I feel like that really shortens the window of what the play scene is going to be, but also makes it enough for both people to do it quickly. Because I realize when you're topping, and there's been nights where I've topped 4 people in the same night, and there's not really a lot of opportunity to do a lot of talking, especially if you're going to have aftercare after each one of those scenes.
And regardless of what Shane would tell you, he does negotiate aftercare. He just lets it be known that there will be none.
I recommend you bring their own. It's a BYOB.
Bring your own BYOA, yeah.
Bring your own blanket.
There you go.
My scene negotiation is perhaps a little bit different in the sense that I generally don't ask people to play, but I find myself fortunate to where people ask me to play, but it's almost invariably always something specific that they're interested in, like someone who's new and has never been flogged before. And so it tends to very much narrow the scope of a negotiation. The most common one that I'm getting lately are people who want to experience single tails. And so that's always an interesting negotiation because they're asking for something specific, but I also understand that even though they are asking for something specific from me, there is a context involved there. So one of the things that I will negotiate in that particular kind of play is what kind of warm-up do you like? Right? Do you like a warm-up? Do you have a preference for what is used for that warm-up? I don't go through the whole toy bag and here's what I have and whatever else, but I like to get a sense of, are we jumping into immediately what it is that you want, or is there some kind of build-up that you need or want to get to that place? So that's one of the things that I negotiate. Oddly, I very rarely discuss medical issues, mostly because I kind of presume, and perhaps, and I will say that maybe this is a fault of my own or a problem that I should probably address, but I typically, when I'm being asked to play, presume that the person asking me to play has enough of a sense of themselves that they're okay to play in whatever style they're asking me to engage in. That seems reasonable.
And I agree that for the most part, experienced people will know to say these things, but the people that are asking you about the single tail scene might be brand new, might be a good thing to, at least touch on.
Right, absolutely. And in that particular case, the other thing that I tend to negotiate is preferences for furniture. Because some people are more comfortable. Because one of the things that my negotiating is generally about trying to create a comfortable environment for that scene to happen in. So the one thing that I will negotiate is, where do you want to do this? Where are you going to be more comfortable? Whether there's a cross
Yeah, that's a really good point, because in some dungeon spaces there are more secluded areas, and there are some very, very public, in the middle of everything areas. So,
but there are also
you're a
things
dork. You ask for furniture preferences, but not medical situations. Silly.
Sure. Well, like I said, I presume that the person coming to play with me has an idea of whether or not they're capable of playing.
Well, I hope you're asking newbies medical situations, though.
Well, the fact of the matter is I very rarely play with newbies. Unless
Okay.
it's something like, like I said, there was somebody that was new. It was their first play party. They wanted to experience a flogger, and it was after one of the classes that we had done on, introduction flogging and whatever else. So I think she had a sense that that I had a confidence because, in theory, I had been voted to teach the class. Like, whether that was smart on her part, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I knew it was
Probably
going to be
not.
like 15 flogging. I knew it was going to be 10 or 15 minutes of flogging. I wasn't really worried about her diabetes at that point. Like Wilford Brimley,
Did you just say diabetes?
Yeah.
Yes, there are some things that are not relevant, when you're talking about a
and
very
that's kind of
specific
my
thing
point.
that people come to you for.
But that's my point, is that typically when people have asked me to play, it's people who know me and know what I'm bringing to the table, have seen me do sort of like full scenes, or have seen me do whatever it is that they're interested in doing. Like, I'll give you an example. No one in the history of my experience in this country, quite frankly, has ever said, "Shane, I want you to tie me up." It has not happened. I doubt it will ever happen. I get very few requests to cuddle, on a professional level. But I do have people who will come
I'll
to me
ask
and
you to
say,
cuddle next time.
Unprofessional
Next time I see you at a party.
yeah, well, but because I used to do a lot more demos, I've had people who have come up to me and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in having you, say, set me on fire," right? And then I'll generally ask some more specific questions about that. But generally, I'm dealing with people who know what I'm bringing to the table. But oddly enough, one of the things that I really do negotiate, especially in public play, because depending on the dungeon that you're in, the rules are different. And so one of the things that I'm very clear to say is that I am not going to, and there may be a stumble on language here, we can argue that, but I will say I am not going to overtly sexualize this this scene, which means I'm not going to be like groping you. I'm not going to be like, unless it's part of what was negotiated. When I say part of what was negotiated, I mean, if you're, then clearly I'm going to be touching the breast region. Like, I don't have to say like, but because I typically play with female bottoms wearing. To me, I consider those barriers. Like, I'm not going to be touching those places.
Well, I'm not playing with you then, Shane.
You'll have to negotiate it, Cupcake.
Yeah, but my point is that a lot of people want that experience, and if they say, "Hey, I want something that's more sexualized," again, depending on the space that you're in, you can negotiate that. But I like people to know that I'm not in this because, hey, I get to get you naked, and because I get to do the things to you, that I can do whatever I want to you. Right?
Well,
I want to make sure that people know I'm not taking it beyond what was requested of me. Because they didn't say, "Hey, I want you to, I want to experience you doing single tail play on me and fingering me in the middle of the dungeon." Like, they didn't ask for that. So I want to make sure that they understand that that's not why I'm doing this.
Right. But what if it is why you're doing it? Let's say it's something that would, that is something that you would do with this person.
I think, but I think you have to negotiate that. But that's why I'm clear about it.
Okay. But another point that I mean, a lot of times what we talk about when we're talking about negotiation, especially for pickup play, is what submissive is, or the bottom is okay with, wants, or, it leaves a lot of people forget about the top, that the top also has power in that negotiation. This isn't an amusement park ride. Sometimes, Shane, I know you're saying somebody saw you do a demo, they wanted to experience that. That's great in a service top kind of way. But in my earlier example, when I was talking about going through the toy bag, this one will go in this pile because it will never get used. Well, if that's something that is really that important to me, then I have a power in that negotiation to say, all right, well, we may have a problem here,
Right.
Or if I want to sexualize the play and if they're not interested in a sexualized play, and I am, and I don't feel like I would get out of it what I want if I can't, then I have the opportunity to negotiate harder or walk away.
I agree, but I guess that's the interesting point, is that when I had done the demo, the flogging demo, and the girl asked me to do, to try flogging as a bottom, I said okay because that's, in my mind, that's kind of what I was there for. But if I'm just there hanging out and somebody asks me for, I'm interested in flogging, there's a really good chance I'm going to turn that down because simply the act of flogging somebody doesn't do anything for me. So I understand what you're saying. I would say no to that offer. You understand what I'm saying?
And
So,
it does in a lot of ways, as we've talked about this in other discussion groups, come down to kind of a supply and demand, the person willing to walk away. So if I say, look, I want to get my hands on you, I don't want to just, hit you with a single tail. I'm not going, the act of hitting somebody with a single tail by itself doesn't do anything for me. It's a lot of work. I might be missing out on other opportunities with other people, etc. And if I'm, if I say, hey, that's a deal breaker, I'm not interested in that with you. Well, then if they say, okay, fine, we can't really do that, then all right, well, we can walk away from that and decide not to play. But that's another thing too about these negotiations is that people have this idea that when they found somebody in a dungeon for pickup play, I'm interested in you, you're interested in me. We're going to negotiate something, I think is a bad place to start. To say, we already know something's going to happen, now we just have to decide what. I think that people need to have a little bit in order to get the kind of play that they want and to have good experiences. They do have to be ready to walk away, to say, this isn't going to be for me.
Yeah, and not take it personal when someone says, that's just not what I'm into. But I think, too, especially as a bottom, if you're going to approach somebody, a bad attitude, in my opinion, to have with pickup play or rapid negotiation, whatever you want to call it, it is that. It is a negotiation. So if you go to, if I go to Shane and say, I want X, Y, Z, are you down with that? And then he goes, I'm not sure. And then I go, okay, well, never mind, because I came with the 3 things that I wanted, and that's all I wanted. That's not really a negotiation, and I don't think it gives you the best reputation when you have that. I mean, it's fine to approach someone and no harm, no foul, and then just walk away, but I don't think you usually get, in the end, what you want from that. No relationship comes of it. I disagree that this idea of pickup play, you don't have a relationship with that person. While you're playing with them, you most certainly do have some kind of relationship with them.
I
And
agree.
maybe you don't have a word
I agree
for
with
that,
that too.
but that it exists in that space. And I just feel really strongly, I think there can be parts of negotiation, too, that I wanted to bring up that can be kind of hot, even though you're not in your scene yet. It's kind of part of your scene. So maybe talking about someone's medical issues, it's not really sexy. It's not really ever sexy. Sorry. But telling someone, go pick your furniture and wait for me over there, that's kind of a sexy thing to say to someone, and it's a way of figuring out what freaking furniture they wanted without having to have this long conversation about how do you feel about this, how do you feel about this. That's a fun way of doing it. Touching someone and saying, can I touch you here? Can I do this? What about this general area? You can be kind of playful with it. I think the other thing that I love is what Michael was talking about earlier about, if you have a toy bag and you have someone who wants to play with you, it can be really fun to go through someone's toy bag with them. Now, some people don't want you in that shit. They're like, don't touch it. It's mine. It's organized. And that's fine. But some people really like it when you go through it, you see what you're into, and you kind of just don't know the rapport that you can develop over that activity. So I kind of can't preach that enough, that that's also a really good strategy.
Okay, can I just point out one quick thing before the next person talks? We keep talking about negotiations, and I always just like to point out, again, when negotiations are happening, that's not just the bottom saying what they want or what they like or what they dislike. As a top, I think that you also need to have in your mind when you go into playing, what are your hard limits with this person? If this person bites you, is that going to be a trigger when you're tying them up? So also, as a bottom, we need to be asking the tops, what do you like? What do you dislike? What are you expecting out of this? What's going to make you comfortable or uncomfortable? So let's not forget that the top needs to be a part of the scene as well, that it's not always just about the bottom. Because me as a bottom, I want to make sure my top has a great scene too and has a great experience.
Well,
So
I
just
think it's
a friendly reminder.
and we talked a bit about that, but I think you bring up a really good point that when it comes to negotiation, I don't think it should be the top who asks all the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we get into that sometimes, and sometimes it's because the bottom is doesn't feel like they should have that control. They think that the scene will be hotter if, that they're not asking questions, taking control, making demands or anything like that. But I do feel that, that should go both ways, and that there should be some engagement. What are you going to get out of this scene? Do you enjoy this? What can we do that will, make this a better scene for you? If you can ask those kinds of questions, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, because I think the hard limits is a big one, because, if I'm in rope, sometimes that person, if I come close to their leg, I may want to bite them. And if I bite them and that's a trigger for them, that's going to put the top in a bad space. And me as a bottom tied in rope, I don't want to put them in a bad space where they're going to trigger out and I'm going to be stuck in this rope. So I think they're just safety things as
yeah,
well.
because that's what they do. Bitch bit me, I'm out of here, and just leave you hanging there.
Well, you never fucking know. Like, I could say, I fucking hate you, you cunt bastard dickwad, and, cunt could be a trigger word for them.
Cupcake, I know a lot of the rope people in this town, and they might leave you behind, but they're not leaving the rope behind.
Nope.
That's true.
Taking the rope.
That is true.
That is really true.
You know how much I paid for that?
I love that rope.
I just think it's important for us to show the tops that they are involved in the scene as well. So I'd like to point that out.
Yes, a top, certainly. Myself, just personally, I do like to feel like I'm not an amusement park ride.
Yeah.
I've actually had bottoms who have come to me and said, I want to try X. And I'll be like, all right, that's cool. Let's talk about that. And then when we're done negotiating what's going to be done, what's going to be happening, they've actually said to me, now what do you hope to get out of this? Mm-hmm. Which I always thought was really, interesting.
Yeah, that says you're negotiating with a considerate person.
Yeah.
I agree. Anything else we can say about rapid negotiation? The stuff of, in dungeons and, after dates and these things, when you're playing with somebody for the first time, or, is there anything that we're missing here? Because I think we've covered a lot of stuff. We've got a little time.
I have a quick question. I guess being fairly new, I've never had somebody come up to me and say, "Hey, let's talk about doing a scene." It just hasn't happened. So I guess my thing would be is what is the normal process before that, before you get into the rapid negotiation? Like, what is the acceptable standards or etiquette for pickup play in the first place?
First I make sure that I fuck them from across the room.
I fucking absolutely
I follow them around. I follow them everywhere they go.
There you go. Be a total creep about it, and that'll help you. No, I really honestly, if I may put some input, I honestly don't think there's a first step, a second step. I think you want to know who you're playing with, so watch them play occasionally, or watch the bottom do their thing, but then just go ask. It's really just being open and going and asking, because if you don't ask, it's going to be no. So just ask.
Yes, the important part too, because I like to encourage that. It is okay to ask. It is not bad form. Even a complete stranger, it is not bad form. As long as you expect to hear no, and you're going to be okay with that. As long as you are not entitled to anything, they may have other considerations. It may be personal, but you can't take it personally. And after you hear that word no, then you just have to drop it.
The other thing that I would like to add along the same lines is that negotiation is not rejection. Because I had somebody come and ask me to play once, and I was like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's find some time to talk about it, because it was a more comprehensive scene that they had talked about wanting to do. And they basically, through the grapevine had said I had turned them down, had said no, and how upset and stuff they had felt, and I was like, no, I just don't say yes.
That sounded like a solid maybe to me.
Yeah, and it was just kind of, to be fair though, they were new, and I think that their expectations of sort of what they were hoping would have happen.
No, they just see you playing with everybody else in the dungeon. So if they're a maybe, they're like, yeah, he's not interested.
Because that's how I am.
That's how you roll, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the people I haven't played with, and it's just, there's just no one left.
All right, guys. I think we'll wrap this one up. I appreciate all your input into our talks about rapid negotiation and pickup play. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another couple of episodes. So thank you, panel, for being in the room with us and talking this out. And thank you to the viewers that we have. We will see you around.
Bye.